Hello. So, let me back up. As Kelly mentioned, We Are All Homeless is an art project that I have been doing since 1993, when I began buying and collecting homeless signs from people on the streets. It's perfect that Dan talked about collecting right before this. In 2012, I first talked about this project on the TEDx stage, and then in 2015, which was last year, I talked about the part 2 of this project, which was really mostly about a trip that 3 people and I took across the country, where we traveled to 31 cities in 24 days, buying signs along the way. I talked about the signs, I talked about some of the people that I met, I talked about the art installations that were continuing to happen, and the chances that I was getting to talk to groups and share about this project. I also shared the crazy amount of media attention that happened during the course of that trip and ever since, and the impact that that has had on this project. It has caused a lot more stuff to happen, so now I want to get you up to date about the past year. One of the things that's happened is that a short video about this project was uploaded to a number of websites, most notably UpWorthy's Facebook page, where it's now been viewed over 6.4 million times and shared 80,000 times. You can imagine the kinds of messages and connections that I've made simply because of this one video. I have also now, along with this team that I've been working with, we've finally completed our documentary called Signs of Humanity, which premiered this past May at the Dallas International Film Festival and has now been accepted into 5 additional festivals. So we're excited to see where this is going to go as well. I've now had the opportunity to talk about this project to over 40 different groups or schools around the country, including the Dallas Downtown Patrol, a group of young Buddhists that had their conference here in Dallas, and groups all over. I especially love hearing from children and the crazy ideas they have for solving homelessness. I've now done 29 different installations of these homeless signs in locations all over the place. In the past year, there have been 2 installations in the UK, in New York, in Philadelphia, and Cleveland for both of the political conventions that happened this past July. All of that takes me back to one of the big gifts of this project for me, which is how grateful I am. I'm grateful for all of my friends and the people in my life who love me and support me in this crazy project that I've got. I'm grateful for the safety net that I've got of knowing that I'm really never at risk of being on the street myself. I know no matter how bad I mess up, somebody will be there to take care of me. And I'm grateful for all of the people that I've met on this crazy journey, and I really want to talk to you today about one guy in particular. In 2014, when I got to Philadelphia, I met a guy named Eddie. I bought his sign, which said, "Something to ponder. What if God occasionally visits Earth disguised as a homeless guy, panhandling to see how charitable we are?" Completely hypothetical, of course. Now, there are a lot of deep thinkers on the streets, and I realized right away that Eddie was one of those. That he was clever, that I just felt a connection to him. And he agreed to let us interview him for the documentary, and I want to share a little bit of that interview where I got to talk to him about his sign. So tell me a little bit about what was behind your sign.
I had a more generic sign prior to that, and I wanted to go in a different direction, like be a little innovative. So, I mean, you know.
But how did you get the idea? I mean, where did that come to you around?
It actually came to me, like, believe it or not, out of anger initially, because someone had said something derogatory towards me when I had asked them for money, and I came up with it in my head. I didn't think of it. I mean, I didn't say it to them, but I said, like, you know, for all you know, I'm God. Like, just, you know, checking to see if you know, how charitable people are, and if that's the case, you people are screwed, you know?
So, I'm going to take you back to last year. Kim, who's right there, took this photo of me sharing about my trip. And you can see what's behind me is a big photograph of Eddie's sign. I happened to have this photograph up on my Facebook page in February, and on February 28th, I get this random message from some guy named Eddie Dunn. Eddie says, "You probably don't remember me, but you bought my sign in Philly back in 2014 for $20. And I just wanted to let you know that 4 months after that, I was in jail in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, and I had a really profound experience and was actually set free before I got out of jail." So that began a conversation between Eddie and I that has not stopped. Now, I mentioned that I did an exhibit at both the Republican and Democratic National Convention. This was the installation that I did in Philly as part of this big group show. And I contacted Eddie, told him I was going to be in Philadelphia, and asked if he wanted to meet up. And he said yes. So Eddie and I connected for the first time since 2014, and I got to take him to this art show and let him see the exhibit, which, by the way, contained his sign. And I got to witness Eddie walking up to the wall and seeing his sign for the first time, and he shed some tears. And it was a really profound time for me. We ended up spending 4 hours together. We went and ate some Mexican food, and we began to build a friendship. 2 months later, I find that I'm doing another installation in the University of Pennsylvania in Philly, and I invited Eddie to come and be on a panel with me and some researchers who had done a research project about the signs that I collected across the country. That, by the way, that article about those signs has been published in the American Journal of Public Health. So Eddie joins us on this panel, and it was then that I realized that Eddie and I are probably going to be friends for a really long time. And I want you to meet Eddie, so please join me in welcoming Eddie Dunn.
How are you?
How are you?
Eddie and I, over the past couple of weeks, have been sending some questions back and forth, and as a way to get to know each other even better. And we thought that might be a good way to for you to get to know a little bit more about Eddie's story. So I'm going to start by asking you, would you share a little bit about how you got to be on the streets?
Certainly. I grew up, I'm from a neighborhood in Philadelphia called Kensington. It's an area that's known for drugs, for crime. Myself, I was a full-blown heroin addict by 19. I struggled with this illness. I suffered from this illness off and on for most of my adult life. Periods of time I was able to put together time clean and would basically concentrate on fixing the outside of my life. I need to get a job, I need to get a house. And I was able at periods to obtain some of those things, but internally, like the drugs eventually would draw me back. And by the time Willie and I met, our first encounter, I was 37 years old. I'd been suffering the worst consequences I ever had as a result of addiction. I was living on the street, and this picture here was taken by a friend of mine, and I didn't even know. Unbeknownst to me, she snapped a picture of me, and she said that the reason why she took that picture, she sent it to me about 6 months ago. She said the reason why she took that picture is because she believed that was the last time she was going to see me alive. So, that's pretty much the story behind that.
So I know this is a picture of you and your mom. So what changed? How'd you get out?
Well, I was basically living under a highway. I was panhandling for money with a sign to survive, defeat an addiction. Essentially, just tired of being a slave and overwhelmed with guilt and remorse. And treatment centers really weren't working for me at the time. I wouldn't stay put in any of them. I had a warrant for a DUI in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. And my thoughts were, if I go to jail, that's somewhere where I can't just like leave if I want to. I mean, I guess you can, but it's pretty hard. So I contacted my mom, who picked me up and essentially took me to jail. And when I was in there, like in the message that I sent to Willie, I had an experience in the spirit when I was in there, and an interchange, which is the part of me that needed to change all along, and had a profound impact on my perception. And and I got out, and that there is a picture of my mom again, good old mom, coming to the rescue, taking me to the Goodwill so that I could buy clothing to find employment. And here I am 2 years later, I'm a public insurance adjuster. Who would have thought that?
So you haven't mentioned this yet, but you're a father and a grandfather. So tell me a little bit about what it's like to be a dad.
I have two. Like I said, during the course of my life, were intervals where I was able to hold it together for a little bit. And I've been married. I've owned a home at one time, only to go back and to the drugs and lose these things. And I have two wonderful children that when I was off the drugs, I was able to bond with, but I was absent a lot of their life, and caused a lot of damage as a result. And the last bout that I had that put me on the street for a good stretch, I was out of their life completely for pretty much a year or so. And the irony of that was that I was homeless literally blocks away from where they were living at. I just didn't want to see them and want them to see me too much in that condition, but unfortunately they did. And they did have to see me in that condition a lot. And today, man, like being a father, like I have a whole different perspective on being a father, being involved with my children, Eddie and Kerry. And back in June, my daughter Carrie had a son, and I now have a grandson, Mickey. And if you look on the left there, that's our first selfie that Mickey and I took together. He's about 10 minutes old in that picture, so I instantly fell in love with him. That one in the middle there, he was an Ewok for Halloween. Just like my children, I'm assisting in indoctrinating him in Star Wars, because that's kind of like what we're about. But I look at those pictures, I look at him, and I think to myself, like, I have an opportunity, unlike unfortunately with my kids, I have an opportunity to have this child never see me in shambles. And it's a beautiful thing.
So I know you talked about addiction and homelessness. Tell me anything you can think of about that. And I'd also like you to share any advice you might have for somebody who's struggling in that place. Maybe they're addicted, whatever.
I've struggled with addiction off and on for 20 years or so. And it wasn't until in my late 30s that I started to experience long-term homelessness. My experience being on the street is that most people that experience chronic homelessness, it's a result of either addiction or mental illness. And and I also know from an addiction standpoint, it wasn't something that happened to me overnight. It was it didn't happen quick. It was a process. And during the course of that process of addiction, I've encountered people who've experienced addiction, who've experienced homelessness, that found a way out. And my advice to anybody who was experiencing the same thing would be to seek those people out, pay attention to what they say. I mean, I know that, especially myself, in that situation, I thought that I was unique. Like, if you had a solution and you found a way out, that wasn't going to work for me. And I would decide that without even trying it. And, my advice would be to seek help, keep an open mind, and pay attention to the people that have gotten out of that situation and resources to get out of that situation.
So one last piece of advice. I'm sure a lot of these folks had feelings like I have, which is, I'm awkward. I don't know what to do when I see somebody on the street with a sign. What advice would you give people when they encounter somebody on the street?
Two words come to mind, kindness and compassion. I've been on both sides. I've been the guy that was approached by people that were on the street panhandling. I've been the guy who approached people on the street while I was panhandling. some of the most memorable encounters, some of the most memorable experiences that I had on the street, aside from the negative ones, there were a few of them, but were, just gestures of kindness. I remember one time in particular, I was sitting on the ground of a shopping center parking lot counting change, and a guy approached me and he said, listen, I just want to let you know God loves you and I love you. And I don't even remember if that guy gave me any money, but I remember how he treated me. And, and that goes a long way. So just remember, when we see those people, that they're humans, and, just a kind gesture or a smile goes a long way. And that, we also, not just myself, but others like me, get better. We also get better as well. So that would be.
Thank you for that advice. I could talk to Eddie all day long, as you guys can probably tell. What I want to share and what I want to leave you all with is something that I've talked a little bit to Eddie about. When I started this project 23 years ago and I started buying signs, there was a sense that it was us and them. That's how I thought about it. And now, after doing this for all these years, after getting to know you, what I realize is it's just us. So thank you, Eddie.
Thank you.